Okay, so here we are back at our frog, and I'm going to look at the eyes in this video to improve those. In the last video, we looked at the holes that were in the software, in the design that were created by the auto-digitizing, and we removed them. So I didn't tell you those of you who've got the creator level, I didn't tell you to remove the holes under the eyes, but I would go ahead and do that. We will be putting them back, but I want you to remove them for now. So if you can just do that before you go on with this video, then you'll be at the same level as those people with Designer Plus. So just use the same method to remove the holes as you did to remove the hole under the mouth. Okay. Now, the eyes. There are two parts to the eyes. The whites, if we've got individual objects showing, which I have at the moment, we've got the two whites of the eyes. And remember, I said I was okay with those in the last video. But the two black parts of the eyes, they're actually all one object. The eyeball and the outline are all one object, as you can see here in the colour film. If I turn on, I've got my outlines on, so when I select in True View with the outlines on, if I select, I'll get a pink outline, a narrow pink outline around the object, so it makes it a bit easier to see, other than the black little handles, which are harder to see. Okay, so this object only has one angle. All the stitches are going across this way at a 45-degree angle. If I go up to the Reshape tool, click on it, you can find there's only one angle marker, and it's running across here, and it's saying 45 degrees. So the issue that causes is it's not so bad in the eyeball, but when we look at, I'll zoom in here, when we look up here at the stitches running across the top of the eye, they're a lot longer and they don't look as neat as these ones radiating out. So it would be nice if we could have the satin stitches radiating out all the way around. Now, both the Creator level and the Designer Plus level have a tool to add stitch angles in. So while the object's selected, you can go to the Edit toolbox and you can add stitch angles. Now, if you choose an object and it has the remove stitch angles highlighted, I would click on it to remove all the stitch angles to start with and then add the stitch angles in. You can still add stitch angles in if there are existing angles, but sometimes you need to remove them to make it work. Well, it'll work, but so that you can put in, completely new angles. But in this case, there was only one angle, so it's not highlighting remove stitch angles, it's just allowing you to add stitch angles. The problem with that in this object is it's going to be very hard to control the angles when we get round to the eyeball. So I'll just demonstrate that. So I've got the object selected. I'm going to click on add stitch angles, and it actually adds a wire frame around. You can just see it here with the nodes that shape that object. And you're going to add your angles across that object. So if we start here at the outside of the eye, I'm going to make an angle going this way because I'm basically radiating out from a central point here. So I need to click about here, left click, and come across and left click on the other side. Then up here I'm going to go upwards. So it's a bit like going around a clock face. And then up at the top we'll do like a 12 o'clock, and then over here about a 2 o'clock, and so on around here. Now, I could try and put in a vertical one here and see what that looks like. Well, when I say vertical, it's about 5:30, I suppose, if you were thinking about a clock. On the same angle as the eye is leaning, I suppose, is the best way to say it. So I'll left click there and enter. And you see what happens. Although we've got the bottom part radiating out like all the rest of the eye, and it does look a lot better this way. We've got a nice wide satin stitch around there, defining the eye, and it's all the same width more or less round, but it makes this eyeball part look funny because all the stitches are going in and they're radiating into this central point, which just won't stitch out as nicely as something like this. So what we need to do is separate that outer line from the eyeball so that we can control them individually. So I'm just going to undo that, and we've got back to the one single angle, and I'm going to select and click, well, click off the reshape tool and click on the select tool, and so that I'm back to the select option. It looks like I lose that pink line when I zoom, so I have to reinstate it by re-clicking on the object. Okay, so to separate, we can use the knife tool. Now, you've both Creator and Designer Plus levels have got a knife tool in the Edit toolbox as well. So have your object selected, scroll down, it's almost the last one in the toolbox, so just left click on the knife tool. Now you'll notice that pink line has got a lot thicker. So even if you're not in true view, you will get this thick pink line around the object that was selected, indicating it's ready to cut. So we're going to zoom right in, and that line doesn't disappear on you. And I'm going to left click in this inside area here, and I'm going to drag my cursor across and left click out here to make a cut line. Now, I would have, if I want to cut the other side, I could do it two ways, but to do it all in one go, it's just, you can just continue on. So I'm just left clicking, making this line. Now I haven't got auto scroll on it, obviously, so I'm going to zoom out and zoom back in. And I'm going to left click about here and go back across there to cut the other side. That way I can do it all in one go. And then you just hit your enter button. And you can see now, if I click on the object, that outer object, I'll click on it again, is completely separate, and in the colour film you can see too, and then you've got your eyeball separate. So you can leave your eyeball as is, because it's all a nice smooth angle for that satin stitching there. Now we can select our outer part and we can add our stitch angles. So we'll go to add stitch angles. So I need to scroll up here in the edit toolbox and click on add stitch angles. And I will just do what I did before, but I won't need to worry about the eyeball at all. So I'm going to left click here and left click here. One that goes roughly in the same direction as the eye. And enter. Okay, so now I've got, select that and zoom in. Now I've got this nice radiating stitching around here, but I've still got a nice eyeball as well. Now, when you look at it, you might find that you haven't got your angles quite the way you want them. They are completely editable, so we can now select that object again, go to the reshape tool, and you can find the angles. They've got little orange handles either end, and when you hover over them, it actually shows you the angle the line is at. So you can just hover over, left click and drag those angles to the position you would prefer. So I think that looks better there. Other than that, I'm pretty happy with the angles all the way around. The other thing you might notice is that we had a bit of a gap between the ends of this outline and the eyeball. So we can move, while we're in the reshape tool, we can move our ends in, tuck them in underneath the eyeball. At the moment the eyeball's stitching first, so let's swap those over. So while I'm going to select the outline, it's gone back to select mode now, out of reshape, and I'm going to move it up one object in the colour film. So I'm going to come up here, and that's just back one object, the upward pointing large arrow, the first icon in the toolbox up here. So that's moved the outline underneath the eyeball. You'll also notice that you might get a running stitch of some sort, an extra object. That's because the software is saying, well, I've got to get from this object to that object, from the end of this object to the start of the next object. Because we've moved them around, this is not going to work properly anyway, this running stitch. So we'll get rid of that, and we'll put our own in later, but we might not need one if we move our start and end points. Okay, so now we can grab this one and go to the Reshape tool, and we can move those two nodes in. So I'm going to zoom in over here, and you can see the yellow nodes here. I'm going to select this one by left clicking on it. I'm going to hold my shift key down and select the other one, and they're both blue now. So now when I move them, they move together. So I'm just going to move that in under that eyeball a little bit further so that we don't get any gaps there. And same on the other side. Oops. I've probably got too many nodes here, so I'll delete that node. When you're doing this, you can start to delete any unnecessary nodes just by selecting them and clicking off them, clicking on them and selecting them, and hitting your delete button to get rid of them. So once again, click on one of the end nodes, hold your shift key down, click on the other one. When they're both blue, you can drag them both in under the eyeball. So it looked like they were overlapping, but there's a bit of pull compensation there, and it's causing a bit of an issue. Now when you do that, I'm just going to take out these nodes here. I'm actually going to click on this node here and this node here, and all the ones in between will select, and I'll delete those as well because it goes quite skinny there. When I did that, it has actually caused a funny angle here and here because I've swung it round. Actually, that 45-degree angle is still there. I'm going to select that, click on it and delete it. So now I've only got the other angles. And let's just tweak this angle here again. And just moving it closer to the end, see if that helps. No, I'm going to add an extra angle in right at the end here. So even though it says I can remove stitch angles here, I don't want to remove them all. So I'm just going to add stitch angles again and just add 2 in here. 1 there and 1 there. Enter. All right, I'm happy with that now. Let me just move that one a little bit. So we've improved our satin stitch outline, and we've improved we've put our eyeball on top. Select and click off. Now we need to have a hole underneath this eye, but it doesn't need to be. The previous hole just butted up against the edge of the black. There was a little tiny bit of overlap because of the pull compensation, but it could have easily caused gaps. So that's why I've removed the hole. Now there are ways you can add the holes back. In creator level, the only option you've got is to use the remove overlaps tool to create your hole. You don't have an add holes in your edit toolbox like Designer Plus. So I'm going to show you how to do it with the remove overlaps first. Now, if I was to select this black and the white and then click on remove overlaps, it would create a hole underneath the whole area. But the problem with that is that this black here would also trim off edges of the white and also around this edge of the white as well, because it's on top of the white. So anything on top is going to trim off what's underneath it unless you lock it. So what I'm going to do is just use the whites of the eyes to start with. So I'll select the right white, that one. Okay. And you can see here that if I select that again, the black stitching doesn't really even come out far enough anyway. We'll have to tweak that in a moment because this is right on the edge of the white object here. But let's just go to our remove overlaps. And you can see if we go up to our green that we've got a little hole, whoops, a little hole in the frog face now underneath the eye. And if I go out of true view, you might even see that there. Okay. Now we actually wanted that hole to come around here rather than try and click on the black, which will, well, I'll show you what it does. So let's select the black this time and click on the remove overlaps. You can see I've now got two holes. Now that's just going to create awkward stitching where the green of the frog has to stitch this piece through here. It would be far better if we had one single hole. So I'm going to undo that. Now you can see here that the hole has got a margin between the edge of the white and the hole. In other words, the size of the hole is smaller than the white, and that's because when you use the remove overlaps tool, it automatically puts in a margin. Now the margin default can be found up here in your options. So if you click on this little spanner and hammer, your options dialog will open and you can click on the remove overlaps tab and you'll see here that 1 millimeter is the default margin. You can change this to 1.5 so that there's more, the hole is smaller and there's more overlap, or you can go down to have less of a margin of 0.5 or stay at the 1, or you can take it out altogether. There are possible uses for that, but just be careful. If you change this, it will stay changed unless you come back in and change it back. So just remember that, because you might want to use the default next time and you might have forgotten that you've changed it. So after you finish your design or after you finish removing overlaps, if you change this, go back in and change it back to 1 millimeter. Okay, we're going to cancel that, but that's just to explain that there is an overlap created by the hole. So what we want to do is make that hole come down here around the bottom of the eyeball, but using this as a visual to help us keep a good margin in there, if that makes sense. So what we need to do is select the object that's got the hole in it, which is the green, and I have got it selected because you can see it's pink, and go to the reshape tool. And we'll get all the nodes for that hole there like we did before. Now instead of deleting them all to get rid of the hole, we're going to move them to reshape the hole. So with the reshape tool, we can, as you saw before, delete nodes, but you can also move them and you can select them and move them wherever you like. So let's do right in here, and we don't need all of these nodes. Because this was auto-digitized, it's created a lot more nodes than you need. So let's leave this one here, but let's box select some of these and get rid of them. So we'll just delete those, and we're getting a nice smooth arch there. We can probably delete those too. And delete some of these. And you can also click on one node and hold your shift key down and click on another node, and all the nodes in between will select. So that's another way of deleting some nodes. And I can delete them individually. Right, so I've just got this, let's go back to this corner here. We just want one node there. Delete. Okay, so now I can grab this node here, left click and drag it down here and reshape that hole leaving a margin, as I said before. Okay, about there. And we can see now in the colour film that we've got a nice big hole, but we've got plenty of margin to prevent any gaps from showing. I might just make this a curve node. So I can select it and press my space bar to change it to a curve node. Let's just create a little bit more margin there, and I'll do the same on the other side. That's better. I like that shape better. Okay, so now we've got a decent hole in there. So that's how you do it with the Remove Overlaps tool. Now I'll just undo all of that and show you, if you've got Designer Plus, how you can just create your own hole. So I'll just undo right back to where I have no holes whatsoever. This was a recovery file, so because my software crashed, so I can't undo any further. That's all right. I can select my green. Let me go to individual objects and select just the green head. Okay, and I'll just edit, remove holes. So I've got no hole there now. Okay, so with the Designer Plus, while it's selected, I can add a hole. So click on Add Holes, and I can just digitize by left and right clicking. So I'm going to right click most of it around here, leaving a nice margin. Enter. And I have to hit enter again because I can add another hole. Well, actually, let's go and add the other hole over under the other eye while I'm at it. So I can start with a right click. I don't have to start with a left click. They can all be right clicks. And enter. And now if I press enter again, both those holes will appear. Okay, I haven't cut this one and fixed it, but we'll just work on this eye so you know how to do it, and you can do both eyes the same. So you would cut this eye into two pieces as well, and set all your angles for the outline. All right, now as I said before, the margin over here with this black against the white is not particularly good, so I'm going to select that black eyeball, there it is, and go to the Reshape tool, and I'm going to just make this black eyeball just a little bit bigger by pulling out the nodes a little bit. I could play around with the pull compensation. Actually, I'll delete that node, and I'll delete that one and that one. You don't need all of these nodes. But the pull compensation is already at 0.4, sorry, which is the default for auto digitizing. So I don't want to change the bottom area. I just want to change this top area where it overlaps the white. So in this case, I'm using Reshape instead of adjusting pull compensation. Both will achieve the same thing. Sometimes it's better to use the Reshape if you only want one part of the design to be expanded, and a particular part of it to be expanded. Okay, let's go to True View and click off. There's a funny little kink here where I cut and over here, so we might just clean that up, clean those nodes up as well. So I think I'll just delete those three nodes there. Whoops. I've clicked on the white accidentally. Let me go back to the eyeball and Reshape tool. And I'm going to go back out of True View so I can see what I'm doing better. And delete those three nodes. Oh, because I try to do a box delete, it's misbehaving and grabbing the other one. So I'll just click on the nodes. That one, hold my shift key down and click on that one and delete. That's taken out the kinks. Another node there, And we might just move this note a little bit to get this a little bit rounder. That's better. So just play around till you're happy with the shape. Another way of looking at this is to hide the stitches altogether, and so long as you've got outlines showing up here, you'll see the outline and you can see if this isn't a very good shape. Over here we need to sort it out as well. Let's delete that one and those two. Hold my shift key down and delete. And we might make this one a round one, this one a round one, and pull it out a bit. Just till you're happy with the shape. That will be fine. Okay, bring back the stitches. That's this little icon here, and we can see there, and come back to true view. And we've got a nice oval shape that's going to overlap that white really well. So that's all you need to do to the eyes. So in the next video, we'll look at the leg here, and we'll talk about all the outlines. Hope you enjoy doing this process, and comment below if you think that it's useful for you, that you're learning a lot, and also you can always ask questions in the comments as well. I will do my best to answer them all. Thank you.